Let's talk about term limits really, really quickly
Yes.
here. What do you think the term limits should be?
There are a few interesting proposals out there, but I would say, on the House side, where you have 2-year terms, if it's 3 or 4-ish terms, that's definitely a healthy amount of time. I think if you have 12 years total, say in the Senate, which would be 6 terms, and then on the House side, and then in the Senate, you have 6-year terms. So that might be, say, 2 years. That something in that range, I think, is reasonable, and that's generally where the term limits
Two
movement
terms.
is right
Two
now.
terms, right?
So yeah, that would be roughly 12 years in the House, 12 years in the Senate. You could potentially do both if you serve in the House and in the Senate. So that would be like 24 years total that you could serve. And I always say, if you have a whole generation to make a change and you haven't made your intended change, it's probably time to step aside and allow some new people to step in. And having seen, look, they're very, I've been explicitly focused on creating change through the legislative process. And I can tell you that if you haven't figured it out by your 12th year, you just have different goals, or you're maybe not equipped to do the job. I've seen a number of members do great things within a 6-year time frame or 8-year time frame. The biggest counter argument you hear to term limits is the idea that you lose institutional knowledge and the staff become super empowered and they end up running Congress. And that's not totally accurate, in my opinion. My rebuttal to that is, one, you already have huge staff turnover in Congress right now. I mean, if you look at a congressional office, I mean, it's very rare you would see someone there who has more than 6 or 8 years of experience, because frankly, those jobs just don't pay well. So they have a lot of turnover. And on top of that, you know, there's a professionalized staff in Congress where it's good for them to have institutional knowledge. You need them helping to train up these members of Congress so they know how to do their jobs more effectively. So I just don't see that as much of an issue, but it's good for your listeners to know what the major counter arguments are as well.
I would imagine that it's not just the politicians who are opposed to term limits. I would imagine that lobbyists are opposed to term limits as
Yeah,
well because they have relationships with existing legislators. So that's one comment. The second comment is around that institutional knowledge. And I think there are some things that can be learned very quickly, but foreign policy, for example, I think I'm grateful that we have some senior members of Congress in the Senate and in the House right now because of all of the things that are going on with Ukraine, with the war in the Middle East. I think it's really, really important for them to have that, possess that institutional knowledge, and also have relationships with leaders in other countries. And so
yeah,
that's the main pushback that I would have on that. But I think there are ways to overcome it, right? You could
absolutely.
create an advisory body of some of these, longer tenured politicians that maybe they don't require elections and maybe they can serve in that capacity. So
Yeah.
I think there are ways to overcome some of these things while imposing some term limits.